My name is Lauren Mitchell, and for the last 3 years, my family has treated my divorce like a contagious disease. It started the day I told them I was leaving Marcus. We'd been married for 7 years, and to everyone on the outside, we looked perfect. Marcus was a corporate lawyer at a prestigious firm. Well, according to my family, I was Marcus's wife. That's how my mother introduced me at parties. That's how my sister Victoria referred to me when her friends asked. "Oh, Lauren, she's Marcus's wife. He's a partner at Henderson and Associates." Never mind that I had my own career. Never mind that I'd been building something quietly, strategically for years. To them, I was an accessory to Marcus's success. The marriage ended when I discovered Marcus had been having an affair with a paralegal at his firm for 18 months. But that's not why I left. I left because when I confronted him, he said, "What did you expect, Lauren? You're never home. You're always on your laptop doing whatever it is you do. She makes me feel important. Whatever it is you do." I'd been managing a $340 million investment portfolio. I'd been angel investing in tech startups. I'd been building relationships with venture capital firms across 3 continents. But to Marcus, it was whatever. I filed for divorce the next day. My family's reaction was immediate and brutal. "You're throwing away a good man over a mistake?" my mother said, her voice dripping with disappointment. "Do you know how hard it is to find a successful husband?" Victoria added, "You're 34, Lauren. You're not getting any younger." My father said nothing, which somehow felt worse. The divorce was finalized 6 months later. Marcus kept the house in Westchester. I didn't want it. I kept my investment accounts, my business connections, and my dignity. The settlement was clean, quick, and in my favor, though my family never asked about the details. What they did ask about constantly was when I was going to get back out there. "You need to start dating again," my mother would say during our monthly phone calls, which I'd started to dread. "Maybe try those apps," Victoria suggested. "Though at your age you might need to lower your standards." At my age. I was 34. The comments got worse over the next 2 years. Every family gathering became an interrogation about my love life, my finances, my future. Victoria had gotten engaged to Christopher Hayes, a hedge fund manager she'd met at a charity gala. Suddenly she was the expert on everything. "Christopher says women over 35 have a much harder time in the dating market," she'd announced at last year's Thanksgiving dinner. "Especially divorced women. Men see them as damaged goods." I'd smiled politely and changed the subject. What my family didn't know, what I'd deliberately kept from them, was that I wasn't struggling. I was thriving. After the divorce, I'd moved into a penthouse in Tribeca. Not a rental, I owned it. Bought it outright for $4.2 million from a contact who needed to liquidate quickly. My family thought I was renting a small apartment downtown, because that's what I told them. My investment portfolio had grown to $680 million in assets under management. I wasn't just an angel investor anymore. I was the managing partner of Mitchell Capital Ventures, a firm I'd founded 3 years ago with 2 partners from my Stanford MBA program. We specialized in early-stage tech companies, specifically AI and biotechnology. Our success rate was remarkable. 83% of our portfolio companies had either gone public, been acquired, or were valued at over $100 million. We'd turned initial investments of $2 to $5 million into returns of $50 to $200 million. Forbes had profiled me 6 months ago. "The quiet architect of Silicon Valley's latest boom," the headline read. The article detailed how I'd identified and invested in 12 companies that were now collectively worth $4.7 billion. The Wall Street Journal followed up 3 months later with a feature called "The Investor Nobody Knows." They'd photographed me in my office, standing in front of the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Hudson River. That photo now hung in a frame on my penthouse wall, right next to my Stanford MBA diploma and my certificate for completing the Harvard Business School executive program. I kept all of this private. Not out of shame but out of strategy. My family had proven time and again that they couldn't be trusted with information. When I'd mentioned casually that I was doing some consulting work after the divorce, Victoria had immediately told her friends I was struggling to find stable employment. When I'd said I was looking at investment opportunities, my mother had offered to lend me money. So I stopped telling them anything. I let them believe I was barely surviving. I let Victoria make her snide comments about my little online thing. I let my mother worry about my finances. I showed up to family events in modest clothing, drove a simple Tesla Model 3 instead of the Porsche Taycan I actually owned, and nodded quietly when they offered unsolicited advice about money management. Meanwhile, I was being courted by 3 major investment firms who wanted to acquire Mitchell Capital. The lowest offer was $420 million. I turned them all down. I'd also been invited to speak at the World Economic Forum in Davos, had joined the board of directors for 2 Fortune 500 companies, and had been approached by the governor's office about serving on the state's Economic Development Council. But to my family I was pathetic, divorced Lauren who couldn't hold on to a good man. The text from Victoria came on Wednesday before Easter. Family brunch this Sunday at Mom and Dad's. 11 a.m. Christopher's parents are coming. Dress nicely. I replied, I'll be there. 3 hours later, another text. Actually, don't come. I stared at my phone, reading the message twice to make sure I'd understood correctly. What do you mean? The reply came immediately. Christopher's parents are very traditional. His mother specifically asked about family dynamics. I told her about your divorce. She seemed concerned. Concerned about what? About you being there. Lauren, you have to understand. Christopher's father is a senior partner at Blackstone. His mother sits on the boards of 3 museums. They're old money. Having a recently divorced woman at a family brunch, especially someone who's still struggling financially, it doesn't send the right message. I read the text 3 times, each time feeling a different emotion. First shock. Then anger. Finally, something close to amusement. You're uninviting me from Easter brunch because I'm divorced? Don't make this difficult. It's just one brunch. There will be other gatherings. Christopher's boss is also coming. Richard Morrison from Morrison Capital Group. He's thinking about investing in Christopher's new venture. We need everything to be perfect. Richard Morrison. I knew exactly who he was. Morrison Capital Group managed $12 billion in assets. Richard had made his fortune in private equity and venture capital. We'd met twice at investor conferences, though he probably didn't remember me. I'd still been relatively unknown at the time. What Victoria didn't know was that Richard had reached out to me 4 months ago about a potential partnership. His firm wanted to co-invest in 3 of my portfolio companies. We'd been in negotiations ever since. In fact, we had a meeting scheduled for Easter Sunday at 2 p.m. at my penthouse to finalize a $280 million co-investment deal. I typed my response carefully. Understood. I won't come to brunch. Enjoy your day. Victoria's reply was immediate. Thank you for understanding. Lauren, maybe think about joining one of those divorce recovery groups? Christopher knows a therapist who specializes in helping women adjust after marriage ends. You really do look pathetic lately. I didn't respond. Instead, I forwarded the entire text chain to my assistant Michelle with a simple note. Confirm the Morrison meeting for 2 p.m. Sunday. Make sure the contracts are ready to sign. Saturday evening, I prepared my penthouse for the meeting. The space was already impressive. 3,200 square feet of open-concept luxury with custom Italian furniture, original artwork from emerging artists I'd invested in, and that view of the Hudson that people paid millions just to glimpse. But for this meeting I wanted everything perfect. Michelle had sent over the final contract drafts. Morrison Capital Group would be investing $280 million across 3 of our portfolio companies, an AI-driven healthcare diagnostics firm, a biotechnology company developing cancer treatments, and a clean energy startup. In exchange, they'd receive equity positions and board seats, while Mitchell Capital maintained controlling interest. The deal would make Morrison Capital one of our largest partners. It would also cement my reputation as one of the most influential venture capital investors in the country. I'd chosen to wear a navy Armani suit for the meeting, professional, confident, expensive without being showy. My Wall Street Journal profile hung prominently in my home office, right where Richard would see it when we reviewed the contracts. That evening my mother called. Victoria told me you're not coming tomorrow, she said, her tone carefully neutral. That's right. She explained about Christopher's parents. About the situation. She did. I think it's very mature of you to understand, Lauren. This is an important day for Victoria. Christopher's family is very well connected. We can't afford any complications. I almost laughed. Complications. I understand completely, Mom. Good. Dear? Victoria mentioned you might benefit from speaking to someone. About the divorce. It's been 2 years now and you still seem so unsettled. I'm perfectly settled, Mom. Are you? Because Victoria said you're still living in that small apartment. Still doing those odd consulting jobs. Honey, at some point you need to accept that your life didn't turn out the way you planned. There's no shame in starting over, but you have to actually start. I thought about my $680 million portfolio. About the $280 million deal I'd be closing tomorrow. About the 3 acquisition offers I'd turned down. About the Forbes profile and the Wall Street Journal feature and the speaking invitation to Davos. You're right, Mom, I said quietly. I'll work on that. After I hung up, I poured myself a glass of wine and stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, looking out over the city. Somewhere out there my family was preparing for their perfect Easter brunch. They were probably discussing Christopher's brilliant career, Victoria's upcoming wedding, and poor, pathetic Lauren who couldn't get her life together. Let them, I thought. Tomorrow they'd learn the truth. Not from me. But they'd learn. Easter Sunday morning, I woke at 7 a.m. and went for a run along the Hudson River Greenway. The city was quiet, peaceful. By the time I returned to my penthouse, showered and changed into my Armani suit, it was 10:30 a.m. My family's brunch would be starting in 30 minutes. I made coffee and reviewed the Morrison contracts one final time. Everything was in order. Michelle had confirmed that Richard would arrive at 2 p.m. with his legal team. At 11:15 my phone buzzed. A text from Victoria. Brunch is wonderful. Christopher's parents are delightful. His boss Richard is here too, such an impressive man. Thank God you're not here to ruin it with your sad divorce energy. I didn't respond. At 11:47 another text. Richard just asked if Christopher has any siblings. Mom explained about you but said you're going through a difficult time. He was very understanding. Even offered to connect you with someone at his firm who does entry-level work. I told him you'd probably appreciate that since you're struggling. You're welcome. Entry-level work. At Morrison Capital Group. Where I was about to become a $280 million partner. I smiled and set my phone down. At 1:30 p.m. I did a final walkthrough of the penthouse. The contracts were laid out on my office desk. The Wall Street Journal profile was visible on the wall. Everything was ready. At 1:55 p.m., my building's concierge called. Ms. Mitchell, Mr. Morrison and his team are here. Send them up, please. I stood by the windows waiting. The private elevator opened directly into my penthouse. One of the features that had attracted me to the property. At exactly 2 p.m. the doors opened. Richard Morrison stepped out, followed by 2 attorneys and Christopher Hayes. Christopher. Victoria's fiancé. Looking confident and self-assured in his expensive suit, clearly there to impress his boss. The moment Christopher saw me, his face went completely white. Lauren, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Richard looked between us, confused. You two know each other? She's... Christopher started, then stopped. She's my fiancé's sister. Small world, Richard said pleasantly, then turned to me. Lauren, thank you for hosting. Your assistant said you have the final contracts ready? I do, I said, gesturing toward my office. Please come in. We walked past the living room with its original artwork, past the dining area with its custom table that seated 12, and into my home office. Richard's eyes went immediately to the Wall Street Journal profile on the wall. I remember when that came out, he said. Brilliant piece. Though I have to say the photo doesn't do your space justice. This view is remarkable. Thank you, I said. I find it helps with decision-making. Perspective matters in this business. Christopher was standing frozen in the doorway, staring at everything. The office. The view. The Wall Street Journal profile. The Forbes magazine on my desk with my face on the cover. Richard sat down and began reviewing the contracts. His attorneys flanked him, making notes. Christopher remained standing, looking like he might be sick. Everything looks perfect, Richard said after 10 minutes of review. The terms are exactly what we discussed. Mitchell Capital maintains controlling interest. Morrison Capital gets board seats and equity positions. The $280 million will be transferred in 3 tranches over 6 months. Correct, I said. And you're confident in the valuations? particularly for the healthcare AI company. Extremely confident. They're filing their FDA approval next month. I expect a 400% return within 2 years. Richard smiled. This is why everyone wants to work with you, Lauren. Your track record is impeccable. He signed the contracts. His attorneys signed. I signed. $280 million. Done. Christopher, Richard said, standing up, take notes. This is how you build real wealth. Not by managing other people's money, but by identifying opportunities before anyone else sees them. He turned to me. How did you know about the healthcare AI company? We've been trying to get into their Series B for 6 months. I was their first investor, I said simply. I met the founder at a Stanford reunion 4 years ago. She had an idea and a prototype. I gave her $3 million. $3 million that's now worth? Last valuation was $440 million. After FDA approval, I expect $2 billion. Richard whistled. Remarkable. Christopher made a strange sound in the back of his throat. Richard noticed. Christopher, are you all right? You look pale. Christopher started. I didn't know Lauren was. Victoria never said. Victoria doesn't know, I said quietly. I keep my professional life private. Richard's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, then frowned. Excuse me, I need to take this. It's my wife. He stepped toward the windows. Hello. Yes, I'm still at the meeting. What? Slow down. Who said that? His expression changed from pleasant to confused to something close to anger. Victoria did what? He listened. No, Margaret, that's not. Let me call you back. He hung up and turned to Christopher. My wife just received a very strange phone call from someone named Victoria Hayes. Your fiancé. Christopher's face somehow went even paler. Yes, sir. She called my wife to ask if I could keep an eye out for her sister Lauren, who's apparently struggling after a difficult divorce, and might need entry-level opportunities at Morrison Capital? The office went completely silent. Richard looked at me. Then at Christopher. Then at the contracts we just signed. Then at the Wall Street Journal profile on the wall. Entry-level, he repeated slowly. She thinks Lauren Mitchell, managing partner of Mitchell Capital Ventures, the woman who just partnered with my firm on a $280 million deal, needs entry-level work? Sir, I can explain, Christopher started. Explain what? Richard's voice was sharp now. Explain why you brought me to meet with a woman you apparently know nothing about? Explain why your fiancé is calling my wife to offer charity to one of the most successful investors in the country. I didn't know, Christopher said desperately. Victoria never told me Lauren was. I thought she was just, she's always so quiet at family events, and Victoria said she was struggling and you didn't bother to do basic research? Richard said coldly. Christopher, I brought you to this meeting because I thought you showed promise. I wanted you to see how real deals are made. Instead, you've demonstrated that you don't even know your own fiancé's family. He turned to me. Lauren, I apologize for this awkwardness. No apology necessary, I said calmly. Family dynamics can be complicated. Richard's phone buzzed again. He answered immediately. Margaret, I'll call you back. What? Who else called? He listened, his expression darkening. Victoria called my mother too? And told her what? That her sister is pathetic and needs our help. He looked at Christopher with something close to disgust. Pack your things tomorrow. You're off the Morrison investment team. Sir, please. I don't work with people who lack basic professional awareness. And I certainly don't work with people whose families insult my business partners. He turned to me. Lauren, thank you for your professionalism. I'll have my assistant coordinate the fund transfers. Thank you, Richard. He shook my hand, nodded curtly at Christopher, and left with his attorneys. Christopher stood frozen in my office, his face ashen. You let us believe. He started. I let you believe what you wanted to believe, I said quietly. I never lied about my career. I simply didn't advertise it. Your fiancé decided I was pathetic because I got divorced. Your future mother-in-law decided I was struggling because I don't drive a Porsche to family dinners. You all decided I needed charity because I dress modestly and don't boast about my success. Victoria's going to have to explain to your family why she just got you fired, I said. She's going to have to explain why she called Richard Morrison's wife and mother to offer charity to Richard Morrison's newest business partner. She's going to have to explain a lot of things. Christopher's phone started ringing. He looked at the screen. It's Victoria. You should answer that, I said. He stumbled toward the elevator, phone to his ear. I could hear him talking frantically as the doors closed. Victoria, listen to me. No, you don't understand. She's not struggling, she's... Victoria, stop talking. Your sister just signed a $280 million deal. No, I'm not joking. Victoria, I just lost my job because you... The elevator doors cut off the rest. I walked back to the windows looking out over the Hudson. My phone buzzed. A text from Victoria. Call me right now. Then another. Christopher said you signed a deal? For $280 million? That's impossible. Then another. He said Richard Morrison fired him because of me? What did you tell them? I didn't respond. My mother called. I let it go to voicemail. Victoria called. Voicemail. My father called. For the first time in 2 years he actually called me directly. Voicemail. Then a text from my mother. Lauren, Victoria is hysterical. She says there's been a terrible misunderstanding. He says Christopher lost his job. She says something about a $280 million deal. Please call us immediately. I poured myself a glass of wine and sat down with my laptop. I had emails to answer, 3 portfolio companies to check on, and a board meeting to prepare for. My phone kept buzzing. Text after text after text. Victoria, you destroyed my relationship. Mom, what is happening? Why is Victoria crying? Dad, we need to talk. This is serious. Victoria, Christopher's parents are furious. His mother called me personally to say the engagement is off. Mom, Victoria says you're a venture capitalist? That you have hundreds of millions? Why didn't you tell us? I set my phone to do not disturb and opened my email. They'd find out eventually. The contracts would become public record. The business press would cover the Morrison Capital Partnership. My name would be attached to the deal in every trade publication. But right now, on this Easter Sunday, while they dealt with the consequences of their own assumptions and their own cruelty, I had work to do. Monday morning I woke to 47 missed calls and 89 text messages. Most were from Victoria, ranging from furious to desperate to pleading. Christopher had officially broken off their engagement. His parents had made it clear that the Morrison family's displeasure meant the Hayes family would not be associating with the Morrison family professionally or socially. Since Christopher's entire career had been built on Richard Morrison's mentorship, he was now essentially blacklisted in their social circle. Victoria blamed me for all of it. You could have told me, one text read. You let me humiliate myself. You let me ruin my engagement. What kind of sister does that? My mother's messages were more measured but equally insistent. Lauren, we need to discuss this. Your father and I had no idea about your success. Why did you keep this from us? More importantly, why did you let Victoria embarrass herself? You could have prevented all of this. The one that surprised me came from my father at 6:47 a.m. I looked you up. Forbes, Wall Street Journal, Business Insider. I had no idea. We need to talk about family investments. I have some ideas that could benefit from your expertise. I responded to none of them. Instead, I went to my office in Midtown. Yes, I had an actual office, a full floor in a building near Grand Central that Mitchell Capital shared with 2 other firms. My partners, David and Priya, were already there when I arrived. Did you see the news? Priya asked, pulling up her laptop. Business Insider had published a story about the Morrison Capital deal. Morrison Capital Group partners with Mitchell Capital Ventures in $280 million tech investment deal, the headline read. The article mentioned me by name, included a quote from Richard about my exceptional track record, and referenced my Wall Street Journal profile. Your phone must be exploding, David said. Family? Priya asked knowingly. She'd met Victoria once at a company event I'd foolishly invited her to. Victoria had spent the entire evening asking Priya if she was Lauren's assistant, despite being introduced as a co-founder. Family, I confirmed. By noon, the story had spread to Bloomberg, Forbes, and the Financial Times. My assistant Michelle fielded 17 interview requests, 9 speaking invitations, and 5 acquisition offers for Mitchell Capital. She also fielded 3 calls from my mother, 2 from Victoria, and one from someone claiming to be my family attorney, asking about fiduciary responsibilities to blood relatives. At 3 p.m. my building security called. "Ms. Mitchell, there's a Victoria Hayes in the lobby. She doesn't have an appointment but insists she's your sister. She's quite insistent." "Don't let her up," I said. "If she refuses to leave, call the police for trespassing." "Understood, ma'am." 10 minutes later my mother called from the lobby. I had security escort her out as well. That evening I received an email from my father. The subject line read, "Family meeting required." The email detailed how, as my parents, they had contributed to my upbringing and education, and therefore deserved transparency regarding significant financial developments. He suggested we meet to discuss appropriate family investment opportunities and equitable distribution of resources. I forwarded it to my attorney with a note. "Please send a cease and desist if this continues." Victoria's messages became increasingly unhinged. And Dad took out a second mortgage to pay for your Stanford MBA. You owe US. I introduced you to Marcus. If IT wasn't for me, you never would have had those years of stability to build your little company. Christopher's family is suing me for defamation. They say I knowingly lied about your financial status to make myself look better. I need a lawyer. You have to help me. I blocked her number. Tuesday morning, Richard Morrison's office called. His assistant was pleasant and professional. Mr. Morrison wanted to personally apologize for the awkwardness on Sunday. He also wanted you to know that the incident has been handled. Handled? I asked. Christopher Hayes is no longer with Morrison Capital Group. Additionally, Mr. Morrison has made it clear to his social circle that any business involving the Hayes family would be viewed as problematic. In other words, Christopher and Victoria were socially and professionally radioactive now. That wasn't necessary, I said, though I didn't mean it. Mr. Morrison disagrees. He values his business relationships and doesn't tolerate disrespect toward partners. He also asked me to extend an invitation to you for a dinner next month. Small group, very exclusive. Several investors he thinks you should meet. I'd be honored. After I hung up, Michelle brought in the mail. Among the usual business correspondence was a thick envelope with my parents' return address. Inside was a letter handwritten by my mother. "Lauren, I don't understand why you've shut us out. We're your family. Yes, we may have misjudged your situation, but that's only because you deliberately kept us in the dark. How were we supposed to know you were successful when you never told us? Victoria is devastated. Her engagement is broken, her reputation is ruined, and all because you couldn't be bothered to set the record straight. A simple conversation could have prevented all of this. Your father and I supported you through Stanford. We were there when Marcus left you. We worried about you. And this is how you repay us. By making us look foolish? We deserve better from you. Family deserves better. Call us." I read it twice, then filed it away. They still didn't understand. They thought this was about me keeping secrets. They thought this was about them looking foolish. They couldn't comprehend that this was about years of dismissal, years of being treated as less than, years of watching Victoria be celebrated while I was pitted. They couldn't understand that I hadn't set out to humiliate anyone. I'd simply stopped letting their opinions define me. 3 months later, I was in Davos for the World Economic Forum. The speaking invitation had come 6 months earlier, before the Morrison deal, before Easter, before everything. I was part of a panel discussion on the future of venture capital in emerging technologies. The other panelists included 2 former CEOs, a Nobel laureate economist and Richard Morrison. During the panel, the moderator asked me about my investment philosophy. "I look for founders who've been underestimated," I said. "People who've been told they're not ready, not smart enough, not connected enough. Those are the people who work hardest to prove everyone wrong. That's where I find my best returns." After the panel, Richard and I had coffee. "I heard Victoria tried to sue you," he said. "She did. My attorney handled it. The case was dismissed. And your family?" "Haven't spoken to them since Easter." He nodded thoughtfully. "My daughter went through something similar. Not as dramatic, but similar. Her family expected her to fail, so when she succeeded they couldn't accept it. They wanted credit for her success or compensation for her using family resources. It got ugly. What did she do? Cut them off completely. Best decision she ever made." He smiled. She's thriving now. CEO of her own company. Happy. Peaceful. That's good to hear. You'll thrive too, Lauren. You already are. He was right. Mitchell Capital had grown to $840 million in assets under management. We'd closed 6 new deals since Easter, including 2 with Morrison Capital Group. Forbes had ranked me number 14 on their list of most influential venture capitalists under 40. I'd also started a foundation focused on funding women entrepreneurs who'd been passed over by traditional venture capital. We'd invested in 17 companies so far. 12 were already profitable. My personal life was exactly as I wanted it. Quiet, private, and entirely my own. I dated occasionally, traveled frequently, and spent my free time mentoring young investors. I'd moved to an even larger penthouse, this one with a private terrace and direct views of both the Hudson River and Central Park. My Stanford MBA diploma hung in my home office next to the Wall Street Journal profile, the Forbes cover, and a new edition. A framed photo from Davos of me standing with 3 other panelists, including a former Secretary of State. One evening in June, I received a wedding invitation. Not from Victoria, she and Christopher hadn't reconciled. From someone else entirely. Sarah Chin, the founder of the healthcare AI company I'd first invested in 4 years ago. The company that was now worth $2.1 billion after FDA approval. She was marrying her partner and she wanted me there. You believed in me when no one else would, her personal note read. You're the reason any of this exists. Please come celebrate with us. I RSVP'd yes immediately. The wedding was beautiful. Small, intimate, filled with people who'd supported Sarah and her partner through their journey. During her toast, Sarah looked directly at me. Lauren once told me that the best revenge is success, she said. She was right. But the better truth is that success isn't revenge at all. It's freedom. Freedom to build the life you want with the people who deserve to be in it. Lauren, thank you for showing me that. Everyone raised their glasses. I smiled, feeling something I hadn't felt in years around family events. I felt like I belonged. Later that evening my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. This is Victoria. I got a new number because you blocked my old one. Mom is sick. Stage 3 breast cancer. He's asking for you. I know you hate us, but she's our mother. Please. I stared at the message for a long time. Then I called my assistant. Michelle, I need you to research the best oncologists in New York. Find out who's leading in breast cancer treatment. Get me their contact information. Of course. May I ask why? My mother is sick. I'm going to make sure she gets the best care possible. Send me the information and I'll arrange everything. The bills should be sent directly to me. Will you be contacting your family? No, I said. I'll handle the medical care, but I won't be resuming contact. Please make that clear to the medical team. All communication should go through you. Understood. I hung up and looked out over Central Park. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. My family had taught me I was pathetic. They taught me I was a failure. They taught me that my worth was measured by my marriage, my modesty, my willingness to be small. But I taught myself something different. I taught myself that success doesn't need an audience. That strength doesn't need to be loud. That the best way to prove people wrong isn't through confrontation. It's through building something so undeniable that their opinions become irrelevant. My mother would get the best medical care in the country. Because despite everything I wasn't cruel. But she'd get it on my terms, without my presence, without reconciliation, without the redemption arc they probably expected. They called me pathetic. I'd built an empire. And in the end that was enough.